chose Death to be the character in Darksiders 2 because War really set the stage for the Darksiders universe and introducing new elements, and we felt bringing in a new horseman with a totally new playstyle, different personality would be really cool, and Death is probably the most well-known of the four horsemen, so we thought he should get his shot.
What makes Death different from War is almost everything about him. The way he expresses himself, the way he talks.
I have an offer in mind.
The way he handles business on the battlefield, and the way that he gets around. It's much more feral, more animal-like.
War is very much like a Force meets Force, a very head-on, steadfast, loyal-bound soldier. Death is much more of a calculated, elegant fighter, a chilling opponent on the battlefield.
His traversal has definitely improved. It's a lot faster, more responsive, and so is his combat. His weapon is more interesting. He can dual wield or wield a single heavy weapon, depending on your playstyle.
Death's primary weapon is a scythe. It's kind of a unique one. It's sort of a multi-purpose Swiss Army scythe. And he can use it with two different blades. He can attach it together to form the more traditional Reaper scythe. He can use it as a pole arm. Of course, he doesn't stop that. He'll pretty much use any weapon that's made available. You can get big axes, you can get crazy cool claws, big iron fists, and he'll even shoot guns. I mean, he'll use anything that he can, really. The main improvement from Darksiders 1 to Darksiders 2 was depth. We wanted to make the game more involved. We wanted to have more context. We wanted the player to really feel like they're in a real world with people living there, stuff going on, things going on.
We give them more items to tailor their own character, more characters to speak to, so we've got a lot more immersion on the story side of the game.
The first game, most of it took place on Earth, so now we were totally free to create all these new areas. We have angelic fortresses, demon cities, the city of the dead. It got our team super excited. On top of that, there's a lot of weapons and armor, and obviously the new character as well, Death.
Death's the most feared, and he's one of the oldest horsemen in the fiction. They kind of look at him as a big brother. He's feared just because when he really gets down to business, he is the death dealer. That's sort of his thing. He wears his mask as an executioner's mask. That's his trade, that's his business. He takes people down.
He doesn't wait for things to happen, he causes them to happen. So it's a much more aggressive style of game and a more aggressive character.
I mean, I guess it's all wrapped up in his name, right? War implies some conflict, but Death's the final end. Who doesn't fear that?
A few words to describe Death: cold and calculated.
Agile, both in the way he fights and the way he deals with situations.
My favorite word to describe Death is definitely arrogant.
He's an opportunist.
If I could describe Death in one word, it'd probably be badass.
Original vision for Darksiders was pretty grand, and we weren't able to execute on that fully in Darksiders 1, but Darksiders 2, a lot of the stuff we really wanted to have in there, like loot, like skill trees, leveling up, a big world that you could explore at your leisure, getting new abilities that allow you to then see more of that world. We get to do a lot of that in Darksiders 2, and we're really excited about it.
When we were coming up with the loot for the game, we had a lot of fun. We knew the weapon types and the armor and stuff that Death would wear, but obviously we want to have a lot of variety and allow people to really make their guy look different from their friends.
Let me tell you about loot. It's the best new feature we're adding to Darksiders 2. You get to pick whatever gear you want to use. Do you want to use a heavy axe? Do you want to use a faster set of claws? Do you prefer extra fire damage? Do you want added strength? Do you want added stamina?
There's got to be thousands of pieces of loot. I mean, not only is there a bunch of visual combinations, there's a bunch of statistical combinations.
Of course, you're going to find just common stuff, and then you're going to start to find some that have magical properties. You're going to get some that really are loaded up with stats, and eventually, our top tier loot is called possessed weapons, and those are going to be a lot of fun because they stay with you, and you're actually able to take items that you found, and you can feed those items into the possessed weapon to increase their power. Essentially, the possessed weapons level up with you based on how often you feed them with the loot that you don't want anymore. And I think it's that tier of loot that we're introducing that's going to be the most exciting.
In Darksiders 2, we've got a skill tree. There are two major sides. You've got the Necromancer side and the Harbinger side. The Harbinger is more warrior-based, melee, in-your-face, hand-to-hand combat, weapon-based combat. Necromancer is your spellcaster. Your big nukes, fire, arcane, lightning, all that cool stuff.
There's certainly not a chance to just stand in one place in Darksiders 2. The characters are more aggressive in this game. They're kind of up on top of you very quickly. So one, you have to think a lot quicker than you did on the first one. But because you've got so many different tools to handle that combat now, players can handle it in a lot of different ways. They can hold back and use a lot of the magic if they're not very good at the melee combat, but you can also get in and get through from a very like up close and personal style of gameplay. So it's really down to the type of player who's playing the game. It's absolutely worth playing the game for the second time. We hold back some of our really, really high-end, powerful loot items for the second read-through.
There are quests that are going to force you to explore the world into nooks and crannies you didn't even know existed, and to go down through some pretty serious content. And some are funny, some are serious, but there's a lot to see. It sort of harkens back to the elements that were special in old school games. That's what we really wanted to pack into Darksiders 2. We want people to sense our passion. It's a game made for gamers by gamers.
I think one of the biggest challenges in any new fiction is that it's a blank slate. You can do anything. At first that sounds cool, like, hey, you can do anything, but then you realize, wow, I can do anything. And you gotta give yourself rules, you gotta come up with something that makes sense, stuff has to be together, fiction has to not contradict itself. Suddenly you realize that that blank slate's a lot more work than it initially seems it'll be. Darksiders world was created pretty collaboratively. We all threw in ideas. You can't really pinpoint one originator of everything. As far as how the world plays, all the NPCs, all the different factions and fiction and stuff like that, that was kind of collaboratively made throughout the team.
The story of Darksiders is pretty deep, and we haven't actually fully revealed why the apocalypse happened. In a nutshell, you learned that there are forces between heaven and hell that are vying for control of Earth and certain other resources that lie somewhere between the two realms. And the Horsemen are caught up in the middle because they are ultimately the ones who are responsible for beginning and ending worlds.
In the first Darksiders, one of the Horsemen, War, gets framed for destroying Earth. There's a conspiracy between heaven and hell. He sort of takes the blame, mankind's wiped out, and then he is stripped of his powers and imprisoned for 100 years. Then he's given a chance to come back and prove his innocence, and he's got to pretty much kill everyone involved.
The first game ended in very epic fashion. It was one of the things that players really seemed like the most was that moment when War says, "No, not alone," and you see the broken seal and the comets coming in behind him.
Darksiders 2 takes place pretty much in parallel to the first game. In the time that War is imprisoned by the Council, it kind of happens in that 100 years. The Death's kind of own challenge kind of kicks off in that sort of time.
Because there's such a conspiracy and we don't know who all the players are, Death doesn't have any chance of proving his brother's innocence. He knows it'll just be covered up, so he just decides to undo the crime.
I think the thing that Death finds through this whole trip is redemption. I mean, he's carrying a big weight on his shoulders all the way through the game, and you know, it's kind of revealed to the player what sort of weight that he's actually carrying with him, both physically and mentally.
The hardest part was getting it to the point where we knew we were making something special, but once we got there, we were off to the races. We knew it was going to be good.
The most challenging part of creating Darksiders is getting these fantastic environments to match the amazing characters that Joe has created, to making them feel like they fit together like a glove.
We have an amazing concept team, really great artists. Everyone contributes, and you know, a lot of times design will sort of lead the stuff that we're creating.
I think what's really unique about the Darksiders universe is the opportunity for exploration. It's just such a vast world, and it's so teeming with life and teeming with character that it's the kind of place that compels you to just see more.
Scale is really important in the fiction, mainly because you want to get that sense that it is a world bigger and beyond anything that we've ever seen. And that's why we started Darksiders 1 on Earth, because we wanted to give you that anchor point. Here's the real world, here's what world looks like. Now it's going to get more crazy from here.
It's pretty challenging to bring a world like Darksiders to video game, because unlike other worlds and apocalyptic worlds that you may have seen in other games, in the Darksiders world, we have no photographic reference. We have concepts, we have to make everything up from ground up.
The White City is sort of our version of heaven. We didn't really want to show what heaven looks like, so the White City is this outpost where the angels are.
The Eternal Throne is where the lords of the undead rule over the undead plains. So there's a lot of skeletal lords and stuff that rule from that floating fortress.
The Dead Plains is the area of death. It's not necessarily evil place, it's basically the one area that keeps everything in balance. So all the souls go there to be cleansed.
In terms of size, if Darksiders 1 were the moon, Darksiders 2 would be Earth. Scale is very important in the world of Darksiders because we want to convey a sense of wonder to players. They need to feel like they're in the midst of something grand, and I think we capture that.
You know, a lot of our architecture, a lot of our statues and everything that you see in the world is kind of built to like a humongous scale. Also height and depth, everything. It's such a big, huge place. It's got to feel like a real journey to the player.
For me, the best thing about Darksiders 2 is the world. When you play action-adventure games, the world is so important to me. It's got to have cool locations, it's got to have cool NPCs, cool characters to kill. I mean, it's what gives the game context. You have all the moves and all the abilities and all the different things you do in the game, but I like to be immersed in the world that I'm in. I think Darksiders delivers that in spades.
For the eyes of God, we have been judged.
And cut! AB como mark.
We're in Uherse, a city in the Czech Republic.
This is the Darksiders 2 sermon shoot.
The whole project started on the foundation of this script, and that's what really has gotten everybody creatively excited about it.
Darksiders 2 is a very big, epic, sprawling game, and we wanted to do justice to that by creating an epic live-action piece that really conveys the gravity and the tone of the game.
When we've been found guilty, death awaits us all.
We are very lucky to have James Cosmo from HBO's Game of Thrones.
There was a great earthquake. The sun became black.
This script just flew off the page, you know. It was right there.
The great day of his wrath has come.
The world is in utter and complete chaos. There's fallen angels, demons, strange things, fantasy creatures flying around. It's a vision of hell on earth. So it's a pretty intense time, you know, and very high level emotionally. It's terrific stuff.
When Hammer Creative came to us with this script, we absolutely saw this thing as a film.
We worked together with production companies from around the globe to bring it together. We found a really talented young director from Germany named Abdel and a fantastic DP named David Myrick. They have a really amazing visual style that's really brought the script to life.
And cut!
My biggest inspiration was religious lighting, and this thing really allowed us to go contrasty and just get as creative as possible.
Our job is to really launch the game with as much fanfare and scope as we possibly can.
And in my career, I've worked on, you know, small movies and great big movies. And this, as soon as you walked onto the set, you felt this was a great big movie.
Darksiders 2. See the uncut trailer at facebook.com/Darksiders. Pre-order at GameStop to get the limited edition.